Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 21. This is the concluding verse of this chapter. You recall from yesterday's session we looked at chapter 19 and saw that it contains instructions for establishing a fair and equitable judicial system, a system of justice, once you're established in the promised land. But what's interesting in this last verse, this final verse of this discussion about the judicial system, a fair judicial system, there's a verse that has often been quoted over the years and interpreted in some wildly differing ways. It's kind of a well-known verse, but we want to talk about really what it means in the context of a judicial system. So, chapter 19, verse 21 says, and remember this is in reference to justice in the judicial system. It says, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now, this verse has been quoted in many different contexts and in many different ways, and has often been interpreted to mean it's a recipe for personal vengeance. If someone hurts you, you hurt them back. If someone wounds you, you wound them back. Someone slaps you, you slap them back. Hand for hand, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. Matter of fact, Jesus referenced this verse and said, many in his day were misinterpreting it and using it as a measure of personal vengeance. But however, when we look at it in the book of Deuteronomy, and when we look at it in its context, it was never meant to be used that way. As a matter of fact, its original meaning was the exact opposite of personal vengeance. Now remember, this is the concluding verse on an entire chapter that deals with fairness in the judicial system. This is the chapter that says you've got to have at least 2 witnesses, because one witness might be bearing a grudge or something. So you've got to have 2 to make sure the accusation is correct. You've got to have cities of refuge for someone who accidentally causes someone else's death. You don't want them to suffer as though they were a murder if it was an accident, and so you have a city of refuge. The whole chapter is about making sure that the judicial system is fair and impartial and a system of true justice. And then it ends with this verse about life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. So in the context, what is it telling us? This is a phrase or a saying to impress upon the Israelites that when you punish crime, punishment must be fair. In other words, punishment must fit the crime. It must be an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand. In other words, what I'm saying is, when someone commits a crime, they need to be punished for that crime. But the punishment must be fair. The punishment must fit the crime. The punishment cannot possibly be beyond the crime. So in other words, if someone were to steal a loaf of bread, now that's a crime. But you wouldn't put somebody in prison for 20 years for stealing a loaf of bread. You see, the punishment will not be appropriate to the crime. If someone steals $10 from you, that's a crime and should be punished. But you should not punish them or give them a penalty of $1 million. $1 million penalty for a $10 crime is not fair. You see, the punishment must fit the crime. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So this metaphor about an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was always meant to be a symbol that all punishment must fit the crime. So when you punish people, your justice system must be fair. Wrongdoing, crimes need to be punished, but punished appropriately. And so the punishment has to fit the crime. It's never a matter of personal vengeance. It's never a matter of actually causing someone to lose their tooth or to lose their hand. No, it's simply a metaphorical way of saying that the punishment must be appropriate to the crime. Justice must be fair. It must be fair because it reflects, or it should reflect, the justice of God. Hope you join us tomorrow as we continue our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy.